material above the rim.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Politics. I'm Deborah Hutchison in the Rogers TV studio. Joining us now via video is Oshawa MP Colin Carrie. How you doing? Are you getting used to this new technology? It's just all too common these days, isn't it?
Well, you know what? I'm not used to it yet. I'm getting better with it. But for interviews like this, it seems to go quite well, as long as your internet is not being overloaded. But for the virtual parliament, I've had comments from constituents saying, "Hey, Colin, I saw you on the Hollywood Squares." If it's a little bit different, but we do have to find new ways of communicating, whether that's at the parliamentary level or it's with each other. I know a lot of seniors and seniors residences are getting used to iPads for the first time. And I know with my own mom, she's 91, and we've got her on Skype before we have my brother on Skype. So it's something necessity requires us to get better with this technology. And, I just want to thank you for inviting me on today, because there's a lot of people we've been communicating, still a lot of questions about this crisis, how we're going to emerge from this crisis, what it's going to do to our economy. And the more information we get out there, the better it is. So thank you very much, Deb, for doing this.
We're very grateful that you can spend time with us. Let's start with some good news coming out. GM Oshawa is now making masks, and the production is now in full swing, making headlines this week. Finally, something to really smile about.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I want to commend General Motors of Canada, and particularly David Patterson, as you know, the vice president over there. He's been in contact with me constantly over the last 4 or 5 weeks in regards to this project. I got to tell you, I'm so impressed with our community. When this crisis occurred, as you know, many countries around the world were caught back on their heels, especially us here in Canada, without the personal protective equipment that we needed. And many manufacturers were standing up to the plate to contribute. And I'm so pleased that our local community, whether it's with General Motors, who said they are going to be producing these at cost to deliver to the Canadian Public Health Ministry, or workers at Unifor, or the collaboration of everyone involved. I think it just makes us very proud to know that when we're caught in a push down, that our community stands up and sees where we can work to innovate and help solve a problem. So this is putting people back to work. It's repurposing part of the General Motors plant. And it's something that is really going to make a difference for Canadians as we restart this economy. So I do want to thank David Patterson, the folks down at General Motors, Unifor, for everybody coming together, because sometimes these crises will bring out the best in people. And I got to say, I'm so proud of our community, whether it's people who are at the All or Nothing Brewery who changed over from making alcohol to hand sanitizer, to all the frontline workers who are out there every day, to the people at Freshco, where I do my grocery shopping there on King Street in Wilson. These people in our community are out there keeping us safe, but also keeping us healthy. And I got to tell you, I'm really proud of our community, the way that we've come together. So this is indeed, Deb, good news coming out of GM Oshawa. And let's just hope we can continue getting some good news stories as our economy restarts.
Fingers crossed. Now, if there's one thing that this COVID pandemic has really brought to the forefront, is a reminder of how important it is to keep manufacturing in your backyard.
Yep. And this is a point that I think many of us, myself included, have been making the point over and over again. When General Motors, unfortunately, we got that bad news that they were unable to continue to produce cars and trucks here in Oshawa, people were upset. And I think right now, people are starting to understand that at a time of crisis or national security, it's essential that we as Canadians have the ability to make certain necessary supplies during these crises, whether it's a health crisis, a national security crisis. So I think we will have a rejigging of how important manufacturing is in our community. Canada has been integrated with trusted trading partners, and we can talk about our Five Eyes partners, whether that's with the United States. We have a new agreement with the United States and Mexico. So if we can't make everything ourselves, as long as we're in with trusted partners that they know that they'll be looking after our back and we'll be looking after their back during times of crisis with our integrated supply chains, this is something that we're going to have to make a priority in Canada. And I think Canadians now are starting to realize that this was an unprecedented response from government to this pandemic. And what it has done, it's shown us where some of our weaknesses are. So it's really important for leaders in our community, and I want to applaud the leaders in our community for taking a realistic look, see where we're weak, and make the appropriate changes so that next time a crisis occurs, and it will occur again, we've had pandemics before, we're going to be having pandemics again, but other crises that occur, that we're prepared to make sure that Canadians can get through it with health and safety at the priority.
Now, you talk about trusted partners. What was your reaction when Trump said, we're not sending our N95 masks across the border?
Well, I think my response was exactly like everyone else's response.
What the heck?
What's going on here? And the good news is that those masks did arrive within 48 hours into Canada. But again, sometimes it's really important to have a good relation with our largest trading partner, Canada and the United States. For Canadians, 75% of our trade is with the United States of America. So it would have been nice if our Prime Minister was able to, pick up the phone and just give a call to the White House and say what's going on here, instead of having things go the way that they did. But fortunately, the misunderstanding and what was happening there, we're still not 100% sure what happened, but we were able to get those masks sooner than later across the border. The last year and a half, couple years, we have been working very hard, and I think I sit on the International Trade Committee to come up with a new agreement with the United States as far as the old NAFTA. We've got something they call the CUSMA, and now we have to work hard to make sure that this new agreement works. And for our emergence from this COVID crisis, it's going to be really important that Canada works with our North American partners so that we're competitive internationally, so that we can get people back to work. Because one of the biggest questions I'm getting right now, Deb, people are worried about paying their mortgage, they're worried about paying their bills, and they're worried about being off work. There is a major concern, increased stress. So we want to make sure that we communicate and we have a plan to get people back to work. And that's some of the things that me and other parliamentarians have been working on the last few months over these numerous Zoom call meetings. But I have to tell you, I'm very impressed with the way people are able to work together for the betterment of our community.
So looking forward, the government, when this went down with CERB, they acted quickly and they acted decisively to get money in people's hands. The provincial government has too. But there's a worry as this continues about how we're going to pay for it all, the deficit that we'll end up with, and how the country is going to deal with that. What are your thoughts?
Very concerned, and even how the programs were run out. I will applaud the government for getting the money out promptly, but if you remember, the original wage subsidy, for example, was going to be 10%. They rushed a bill, and we were fortunate we were able to get back into Parliament to improve it, but they've changed these programs so many times, Deb. We're getting calls and calls and calls in the office about, can I apply? Can I not apply? Small businesses, some that have been around for 30 years, concerned that they may not even be able to continue doing business after this. I was speaking to an owner that was in the healthcare services, and she was saying it's so much confusion about the rental subsidies, how we're going to work with our landlords, different small businesses that don't have business accounts. So we've been working hard, and it's very difficult with the virtual parliament to get our point across. These, instead of being parliament, these are committees, so they are very limited on the topics that we can bring forward. But there are a lot of Canadians that are falling through the cracks, Deb, and we're hearing from them every single day. We're hearing from businesses. I was talking to a local business that was having problem getting people to come back to work because of the CERB. So we as Conservatives wanted to put forward a program, for example, that you always made more money if you got back to work, whereas people now, because of the uncertainty, they're worried about if they go back to work, if they lose the CERB, if they make $1 more than they're allowed to make, they will lose the entire CERB. So we need to make these programs better and more transparent, and also have to make transitions as we're transitioning away from it. We had concerns about the student subsidy, where students are going to be giving $1,250 this summer. But again, we have businesses right now, Deb, who are suffering. They can't afford the wages. And our idea as Conservatives was, well, let's give them money to the employers so that students who want experience can get the job experience. Most employers will give them even more money on top of the government subsidy, so that at the end of the day, it would have been a win-win-win, and it would have cost less money to the government to put it through a Canada Summer Jobs program that was enhanced, instead of just giving a straight, $1,250 to students. Because students, one of the biggest problems they're having now is job experience, and if these businesses go under, there won't be that experience for students for the next generation. So we really have to start thinking these programs through and trying to come up with ways how we're going to get people off the program as the economy starts to start again.
It's almost, we're about a minute until break, but I want to quickly ask you just about your office. Continues, you say, to get a lot of calls. How are you dealing with that call volume, when you lose that face-to-face interaction as well?
Well, I really want to applaud my office. Our office was one of the offices locally we did not shut down. We continued to deal with constituents, although it was no in-person meetings. We stayed at the office. We took the calls early on. There was a lot of Oshawa constituents who were stranded abroad that we needed to work literally 24/7 weekends to get them back home. And we're very happy to say that the majority of these stories turned out with very good, happy endings. But a lot of our time now is on the phone. We are presently working at modifying our office so that we can open up and work on those face-to-face meetings. And Deb, again, we're all working together here. And if anybody does have questions, please know that we're still giving 100%. And whether that's through the phone or email, we're working to make sure that your questions are answered.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop you there. We're going to go for a quick break. More of our conversation with Colin Carrie after this.
Securing your recycling in a few steps is simple, like crushing your cans and bottles down in your container's blue box and your box board down in your papers box. This saves a lot of space and reduces the possibility of material blowing out of your blue box on windy days.
If you only knew what I'm going through, I just can't smile without you.
My name is Stephanie Lorero.
And I'm Ksenia Shpak, and we're the hosts of a new show here at Rogers TV called Socialite.
We're here to keep you guys in the loop on all things trending, from social media to the latest tech gadgets and the wonderful world of Hollywood.
We got you covered. Catch us every Wednesdays at 4:30 p.m. and Fridays at 6 p.m. only here on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Talk Politics. I'm Deborah Hutchison in the Rogers TV studio. Our guest this week is Oshawa MP Colin Carrie, who joins us via video. Let's talk about Canada's response to this pandemic. So easy to be a Monday morning quarterback or a backseat driver, but the question a lot of people are asking is, did they act quickly enough with the quarantine and with shutting down the border? Why did we wait so long?
Well, that is one of the criticisms that we're hearing from constituents that are very frustrated because, as you know, the government has changed the recommendations back and forth that are sometimes 180 degrees of what they said originally. Back when this first occurred, we all have to be very clear that things could have been a lot better for the world if China was open and transparent about what was going on. There was a lot of suppression in China. They actually suppressed doctors who were raising the flag internationally about this. So we first found out of it, in early December, early January, the first briefings. And at first, if you remember, even though China was stopping domestic flights out of Wuhan, inside China, we were allowing flights to continue. And people were calling on it to stop the flights for when people came out off the flights. They were supposed to be screened. And originally the government said, no, that's not necessary. And then later on, of course, they said, no, it is necessary. The 14-day quarantine, it was, I remember early on when we were bringing people from Oshawa back around the world, it was a lot of questioning when they arrived. Would they have to, isolate for 14 days? Well, the recommendations were constantly changing. And I think many people know as well that they said originally, don't worry about it. The risk here to Canadians is low. Person-to-person contact, they said, wasn't anything to worry about. And then boom, 180, yes, person-to-person contact is extremely important. They said first we didn't have to wear masks, then we had to wear masks. So a lot of the response from the government, the confusion, people are still asking a lot of questions. And the reality is we have to use a lot of common sense. And we do know the physical distancing seems to work. If you can't do that, the necessity of masks is out there. What was really great, Deb, as I was saying, we're on a lot of Zoom calls, and we had one with our manufacturers who are international manufacturers. General Motors was on one of those calls with the industry committee. But what they've learned, because they have factories in China right now, industry is investing literally millions of dollars so that when people come into their factories, there's automatically each worker that comes in has their temperature taken. And if they do have a higher temperature, they can talk to the person offside. If they need to go home and look after themselves, they're able to do that. So we're learning a lot from industry that is having best practices. And again, I say I'm very proud of General Motors and their leadership. They've actually put out best practices that smaller businesses are actually taking a look at, because the government is slow to bring some of this information forward. And we're very pleased to have great industry partners that are actually getting out ahead so that the economy can start again. Because if we don't start the economy, one of the business leaders was saying, we can't shut down the economy like we did today, like we did it for this immediate first wave. People are forgetting too that this is something that the reason we're doing all this is to stop our healthcare system from being overwhelmed. It's not to stop COVID-19. These things are evident. We're just making sure that our healthcare system can handle it so that people who do get ill can get the help that they need. So as we move forward, we know that we're going to have some more waves of this, but thank goodness we've got a healthcare system now that I think we're pretty confident that they're able to meet the needs that we do have. One of the concerns that is still worrying me considerably are the long-term care homes and how we're looking after our seniors. Because if you're looking at the fatalities, Deb, our seniors who are living in seniors' homes are more and more of the fatalities are happening there. So we really have to, I think, beef up what we're doing to help our seniors at this time, because we are learning that they're the most vulnerable, and we owe it to make sure that their workers have the proper amounts of personal protective equipment, and that our seniors and our loved ones are looked after as best as we possibly can.
The long-term care homes, of course, are a provincial responsibility. What can you do at the federal level to improve that care?
The delivery of the services is actually a provincial jurisdiction, but for example, making sure that we have enough personal protective equipment. This is something that, again, you asked about criticism. Our government was criticized because at the beginning they said it's nothing the Canadians need to work with, and I think they sent 60,000 tons of our personal protective equipment overseas, and we were left without a reasonable amount on the ground. And this is what we're finding. If we can't procure this equipment, then there's going to be consequences. And as we let off, I think one of the things we've learned is that we have to be able to make some of these critical components here within Canada, or to be in trusted supply chains with our trusted partners. And moving forward to the next crisis, we want to make sure that we're prepared. So it's really important that all levels of government learn from this experience and be prepared for the next wave, because we know that there is going to be one. But I think overall, our healthcare system has taken the challenge, and nobody in Canada, I think, that needed a ventilator or needed that type of intervention was without, and we have increased the number of personal protective equipment that we can actually make domestically here, and we have more ventilators prepared. But it's taken, what is it now, since March, January to get to where we are now.
You know, the point has also been made when we talk about the federal government perhaps not moving quickly enough with its quarantine. They were relying on the information they had that they were given by health officials, advice by the WHO, and the situation changed so quickly. How much faith do you have in what the WHO was telling us?
Well, that's going to be a criticism, and I think there's been an international agreement that we are going to be looking at how the WHO processes information, because we're pretty much assured now the initial information coming out of China, as Chinese officials even admitted, is some of the doctors that were raising the concerns early on. I think one or two of them were arrested. One of them even ended up dying. And this is totally inappropriate. We need to make sure that information that is being funneled through the WHO is being checked and double checked, instead of relying on information from perhaps China. They should have been taking a larger perspective, and that's where some of the criticism was, because Canadian officials had different opinions than WHO. And Canadians are expecting our government to, if they're receiving information, to make sure that it's checked and double checked and it's valid. We were caught off guard, all levels of government around the world. Deborah, this was a new virus that we didn't know a lot about. I remember being the parliamentary secretary when H1N1 occurred, and many people, you remember that. But we've never quarantined healthy people before, and we have to take a look at the response that we've done here in Canada, but also around the world, because we have to make sure that next time around we're prepared, and we have information in place that all levels of government can communicate back and forth best practices. Even after the SARS, I believe our public health experts put together a pandemic report and an action plan, and unfortunately we weren't following it. So what does that tell you? So I think there's going to be royal commissions, there's going to be investigations on how governments around the world handle this, but we also have to look internally here in Canada. What can we do better? Because Canadians expect us to make sure that their health and safety is a priority, and we got to make sure that we're not caught off guard the next time something like this happens.
Okay, we're rapidly running out of time. I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about the Conservative leadership. you are going to be choosing a new leader this summer, and you are supporting Peter MacKay. Why?
Yes. Well, first of all, we've got some great candidates to lead our party, and it's always a very difficult decision on who you support, because many of the people that run for these jobs they're all your friends. So you have to choose the person that you think will be best to run not only the party but win in the next election. And my history with Peter MacKay goes back many years when I was a member of the Progressive Conservative Party that Peter was the head of, and he was always impressed me as a unifying individual. And right now in Canada, we've had the rise of the Bloc Québécois after 5 years of Justin Trudeau. The last election, the Bloc Québécois, a separatist party, was pretty much gone from the Canadian landscape. And we've seen a rise of separatism in Quebec. We also see the Wexit movement in Western Canada, where we're seeing many people out west saying our voice is not being heard in Canada anymore. And we need somebody who can not only unify our party, but has to have a record of unifying the country. And I think Peter MacKay, I've known him for many years. He's had senior positions with our government, whether that was Deputy Prime Minister, Defense Minister, or Minister of Justice. He has the background to hit the ground running, and he absolutely could do a better job than Mr. Trudeau from day one, in my opinion. So I'm really excited about this. We need somebody out there who has a proven track record, and I'm very happy to lend my support to Peter MacKay. And I'm looking forward to the final results in September, because we do have to make sure that we have a strong message going against Mr. Trudeau. And you mentioned some of the challenges we're going to have, especially with the deficit and things like that. The Conservative Party of Canada has a record with the last economic downturn. We're actually the best country in the world to come out of it, which actually gave the current government a lot of leeway, even in the good times. But we could get into that story, Deborah, how they wasted the good times about getting our country in good financial shape. And with the spending that's going on right now, we need to make sure, again, we have accountability in our parliamentary system, that there's a record amount of money being spent. And look at this week, we found out the NDP and the Liberals got together, and now Parliament is not going to sit again until September.
You know what? I have to stop you there.
What kind of decision is that?
We're out of time.
We could go longer, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Colin Carrie, MP Oshawa, for joining us. Until next time, everyone, stay safe.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.